So good afternoon, everyone. In yesterday's class, we were talking about Buddhism. So what we are going to do today, we are going to look at some of the previous year questions first, and then we are going to continue with Buddhist and Jain philosophy, and then we'll move on to the Bhakti movement. Okay, that is going to be our plan for today's class. So let us start with looking at the questions. Kahan pe? Just give us a minute. Have you revised what we had studied in yesterday's class? Did you encounter any issues? समझ में आ रहा है? बुद्धिज्म के अलावा बाकी मिडीवल तक का है? Okay, I'll ask the team again and we'll do the needful. Okay. So I have not included all the questions from 2015 onwards. I have taken questions from 2014 as well. Questions which are from important themes. For example, what happens that sometimes when it comes to medieval, UPSC gives names of very unique dynasties. Okay, so it's not possible for any aspirant to know each and every detail of every regional dynasty. That is something which is very challenging. Okay, so there we need to apply the accumulated knowledge. I had already shown you one or two examples in the earlier classes when we were discussing ancient Indian questions. I have included one such question here as well. Otherwise, the major themes upon which UPSC does ask questions, I have included questions from 2014 onwards. Okay, so we are just going to have a look at it, whether you are able to make sense of it, are we able to solve it or not. Okay, so this question was asked in 2023. What is it asking? Who among the following rulers of medieval Gujarat surrendered Diu to the Portuguese? Now this is one particular area that you study in modern India, but it comes under medieval. That is why the time period, that is why I have included it here. So who is the one who is surrendering Diu to the Portuguese? Bahadur Shah. It's a very factual question. If you know the details, you will be able to answer it. Otherwise, there is no method due to which you can apply elimination here. Okay, so you should know about Nino de Cunha. He was the governor at this point of time. You should know about Albuquerque. UPSC has asked the question on Albuquerque as well. So Albuquerque and Cunha, both of them have been asked. Your focus should be on Almeida as well, blue water policy and how he is fighting the battle of Diu, Chaul, those details you should know about. Okay, so this is a simple question if you have read the chapters in Spectrum or even in NCERT, this detail has been given. Okay, so now let us move on to the next question which was asked in 2023. Again, a simple question if you have done the important topic properly. Okay, Vijayanagar Empire से है, क्या पूछा है? Who among the following rulers of Vijayanagar Empire constructed a large dam across Tungabhadra river and a canal cum adequate several kilometers long from the river to the capital city? Devaraya 1, Mallikarjun, Veera Vijaya, Virupaksha. It's a very simple question. It's a direct statement from your NCERT. If you read the old NCERT, there has been a subtopic, Devarai first. It's a direct statement which has been picked up from that particular chapter on Vijayanagar Empire. So I told you as well that when we are talking about Harihar Bukka, when we are talking about Devarai 1, Devarai 2, Krishna Devarai, you should know the important contributions. Okay, so this is one such question where they are asking about the cultural or economic contributions of Devarai 1. Okay, again a simple question if you have read your NCERT properly. In the background, this is the Virupaksha temple of Hampi. We kept talking about foreign travelers' accounts and how they are saying that natural fortification was present in Hampi. You can see the mountains It is surrounded by some mountains that is providing it a natural fortification. Backgrounds are the highlight. Okay, I'll read out the question. In medieval India, the term Phanam referred to. In 2022, this question was asked, and the options were clothing, coins, ornament, weapons. Coins, our answer is coins. So in 2023, you find a question from Vijayanagar Empire, cultural contribution of rulers. In 2022, on terminology. Again, question is from Vijayanagar Empire itself. Okay, it is on terminologies. In 2022, this was another question which was asked. What is it? With reference to Indian history, consider the following statements. What are these statements? The first statement is the first Mongol invasion of India happened during the reign of Jalaluddin Khilji. Is it right? We talked about Genghis Khan coming to Indian subcontinent when we were discussing Iltutmish itself. Okay, so during the time of Iltutmish, he is crossing the Indus river. He is coming to Indian subcontinent. He did not attack Delhi Sultanate. There we had discussed how Iltutmish is following a diplomatic policy by not granting refuge to Mangbarni, who was a Khwarizmi prince. So Genghis Khan had already come to Indian subcontinent. He did not attack Delhi Sultanate. Okay, that is what we had studied. So of course, during the time of Jalaluddin Khilji, the first Mongol invasion is not happening. We have talked about Iltutmish, we have talked about Balban already. Okay, so this statement is wrong. During the reign of Alauddin Khilji, one Mongol assault marched up to Delhi and besieged the city. We talked about this statement specifically, and I said that Alauddin Khilji was able to defeat Mongols 6 times. But there was a time when he was in Rajputana and he was absent from Siri for a long period of time. It is during that time that Mongols were able to come to Siri and they did capture the capital city. So this is an exception when we are talking about the reign of Alauddin Khilji. So of course this statement is right. It might look wrong, because often what we study that Alauddin Khilji defeated Mongols multiple times. But there is one time when they were able to capture the city in the absence of Alauddin Khilji. Okay, so these are the kind of statements that UPSC gives to confuse you. Because many a times when we have general statements in mind, we think that this topic is properly prepared. But there are exceptional details as well which we should keep in mind. Okay, so this is a right statement. Muhammad bin Tughlaq temporarily lost portions of northwest of his kingdom to Mongol. Wrong hai. He had the ambition of going to Central Asia and defeating Tarmashirin. Okay, so during his time, no such incident had happened. Okay, so this is also a wrong statement. Which of these statements given above are correct? 2 only. B is going to be our right answer. Even if you know that one is incorrect, you will be able to eliminate at least these 2 options. Okay, so at some point of time, you can also go by the elimination technique. And you can at least have 2 options where you can make an intelligent guess. Okay, now let us move forward and look at the next question, 2022. With reference to Indian history, who of the following were known as Kuladharan? Arab merchants, Qalandars, Persian calligraphists, Sayyids. Sayyids, we have talked about them, that Sayyids were not politically influential, but they were very much revered in the society due to them being able to trace their ancestry directly to Paighambar Muhammad through his daughter Fatima. So that was a very important detail that we should know. And they used to wear a particular kind of cap to make them distinct from the rest of the population. That is why they were known as Kuladharan. Again, terms. Often we have this misconception in mind that only in ancient UPSC asks terms. No. In medieval as well, UPSC is asking you important terms. And it is a trend that is visible from 2014 onwards. I'll show you some of the questions where you will find that the term Banjara, Arhatta, Mahattar, these terms have already been asked. Okay. Now, there is another term here, Kalandar. Who are Kalandars? Sufis. Okay. So, Kalandars are a branch of Sufis. 2021. With reference to medieval India, which one of the following is correct sequence in ascending order in terms of size? Pargana, Sarkar, Suba, Sarkar, Pargana, Suba, Suba, Sarkar, Pargana, Pargana, Suba, Sarkar. Ascending order. This is where we make the mistake. They are asking you ascending order, not the descending order. Okay, so the lowest unit will come first. So what will be the answer? Pargana, Sarkar, Suba. Okay, here even if you know that the highest unit is Suba, these two are automatically eliminated. Then you have to know the other two as well. Without knowing them, you won't be able to make the right choice. Is this clear? So in this way, when these kind of questions are asked, read the question carefully. Because even when you know the right answer, there is a possibility that you can make a mistake in these kind of questions. They have clearly asked you ascending order. Is this clear? So a simple question, but a tricky one. Okay. Coming to the next question. According to the Portuguese writer Nunes, the women in Vijayanagar Empire were expert in which of the following areas? Wrestling, astrology, accounting, soothsaying. Wrestling is also there. We talked about it, physical activity. In that as well, women are employed. Okay, so be it wrestling, be it astrology, account keeping, soothsaying, or being, let's say, a judge or record keeper, history writing, archers, in all these fields, women were employed. In watchkeepers, as watchkeepers as well, they were employed. Okay, so this was a very specific question which was considered difficult. But again, if you look at the trend, UPSC has been interested in asking about foreign travelers. In mains examination in 2015 or 16, I don't remember the year correctly, there was this question where UPSC had asked you to discuss the history of ancient India based on Chinese and Arab travelers' accounts. Okay, so UPSC has been asking questions on foreign travelers' accounts. Now it is our responsibility to read about them even when we are studying medieval India. Okay, and when we are talking about Vijayanagar Empire, a lot of foreign travelers had visited Indian subcontinent and they had left extensive records. So even though it was on difficult side, it was not an easy question, but the theme is well known to us that this particular theme UPSC has been interested in. Okay, so 1, 2, 3 and 4. Again, you will see a question on Mongols. So we have reached to 2021 and you can see another question on Mongols that UPSC has asked. Consider the following statements. It was during the reign of Iltutmish that Genghis Khan reached the Indus in pursuit of the fugitive Khwarezmi prince. It's a right statement that he had reached there. Khwarezmi prince Mangbarni is going asking Iltutmish for refuge, and he understood that it is not a good time to antagonize Mongols. He did not offer him refuge. Okay, so this is a right statement. Now, if somebody had read even PYQs of 2021, they would have been in a better position in 2023. Because if you look at it, what has been the statement in the other question on Mongol? That it was for the first time when Mongols are attacking Indian subcontinent during the time of Jalaluddin Khilji. So if you are analyzing your PYQs from different statements, UPSC does ask different questions as well. Okay, so if you are able to do the PYQs properly, you will be in a better position. Okay, so this is a right statement. During Iltutmish time, Genghis Khan had reached Indus. It was during the reign of Muhammad bin Tughlaq that Taimur occupied Multan and crossed the Indus. Taimur Lung, Nasiruddin Mahmud, 1398. We talked about it in our class as well. So when Muhammad bin Tughlaq is present, he was a very powerful emperor. Taimur Lung's time period is different. Muhammad bin Tughlaq died, Firoz Shah Tughlaq died, and then there is a series of incapable rulers. One of them being Nasiruddin Mahmud, and it is during his time when Taimur Lung is crossing Indus, he is coming to the capital city and he is doing loot at a very large scale. He is massacring people at large scale in the capital city. And Nasiruddin Mahmud, the Sultan, was not even able to defend the capital city. He ran away. Okay, so that is a very important massacre that had happened in 1398. So it is not during the period of Muhammad bin Tughlaq, it is much after he died. Okay, so this is a wrong statement. Now, if you read these statements are present even in NCERTs. If you have read the history of Delhi Sultanate from NCERT, then also you will be able to answer these questions. Some of the questions are not coming from NCERT. For example, the term Fanam, the term Kuladaran, they are not present in your NCERT. But these are the questions which are on the easier side, where even if you have read the NCERT properly, you would be in a better position to give the right answer. Okay, so this is a wrong statement. Third statement, it was during the reign of Devaraya II of Vijayanagar Empire that Vasco da Gama reached the coast of Kerala. No. When Vasco da Gama is reaching Kerala, later half of 15th century. Devaraya I, Devaraya II, the first half of 15th century. So it is a wrong statement. And if we have to correct, if you have to choose the correct statements, 2 of them, 2 and 3 are wrong. What will be our answer? 1 only. A is going to be our answer. Okay. So again here an indirect question on Vijayanagar Empire. Devaraya II. So if you have read about these rulers, you will be able to solve these statements properly. Let's come to 2019. What have they asked here? With reference to Mughal India, what are the differences between Jagirdar and Zamindar? So let us read the statement. Jagirdars were holders of land assignments in lieu of judicial and police duties. Is it right? Jagirdars were holders of land assignments. They were holders of land assignments. What is written in lieu of judicial and police duties? Then revenue collection. So they were granted Jagirs in lieu of their salaries, and their responsibility was not to maintain law and order, but was to collect revenue and maintain troops. Okay. So first half is wrong, that means the statement is wrong. Okay, still we should read the statement completely. Whereas Zamindars were holders of revenue rights without obligation to perform any duty other than revenue collection. This is also wrong. The second half is also wrong. When we talk about Zamindars, Zamindars were holders of land. They had traditional rights. They had hereditary rights in land. But apart from collecting revenue, they also had to maintain law and order in that area. When is it going to change? When we'll talk about Cornwallis coming as governor of Bengal. It is then when things are changing. He is establishing thanas and making changes in judicial system as well. So that is something that we study in modern India. And there we know that Zamindars were ripped of their traditional rights when it comes to maintaining law and order. But historically, in ancient and medieval India, they had the responsibility of not only collecting the revenue, but also to maintain law and order. Is this clear? So this statement is wrong. Now let us read the second statement. Land assignments to Jagirdars were hereditary. Were they? No. They were transferable in nature. They were not hereditary. And revenue rights of zamindars were not hereditary. They were hereditary. They have flipped the rights. Okay, when we are talking about zamindars, they were hereditary and they were traditionally acknowledged and accepted. Again, with the coming of British Raj, this is changing, that they are going to make changes in the traditional structure, traditional rights which had been upheld by a long period of time. Okay, so when we are looking at it in medieval India, in ancient India, we need to understand that the rights of zamindars were hereditary and they were traditionally accepted as well as acknowledged. Is this clear? So this is also a wrong statement. If we know the basic differences in these terminologies, then we will be able to solve it. And this is something that we have been studying from ancient India. When we are talking about the term zamindar, Jagirdar is a term that we study in medieval India. But even if we know about zamindari, we will be able to solve this particular question. Okay, so what are they asking? Select the correct answer using the code given below. Neither 1 nor 2. D is going to be our right answer. Who among the following Mughal emperors shifted emphasis from illustrated manuscripts to album and individual portraits? Jahangir. Very simple question. When we talk about painting tradition, we talk about Akbar, illustrated manuscripts, and when we talk about Jahangir, individual portraits. Tasveer Khana we had discussed. If you look at the options as well, Humayun, nahi hoga. Because they are saying shifted the emphasis from illustrated manuscripts to individual portraits. तो पहले एक tradition exist करना चाहिए. Babur came, he died within 4 years. When Humayun is coming, he did not have a very stable reign. So of course, by logic, this will not be our answer. We know that Shah Jahan is very much interested in architecture. The answer either has to be Akbar or Jahangir, but they are saying illustrated manuscript to individual portraits. So first a tradition has to exist, then somebody will shift the focus. So even if we don't know the correct answer here, we don't know the factual detail here, if there is a need to mark another question, we can make an intelligent guess in these kind of questions. Okay, so our answer is going to be C. Again, term. With reference to the economic history of medieval India, the term arhatta refers to bonded labor, land grants made to military officers, water wheel used in the irrigation of land, waste land converted to cultivated land. Water wheel, we talked about it, the term arhatta. When we talk about bonded labor, what is the term? Vishti. Again, UPSC has asked a question on Vishti as well. Okay, so here you can see that one option is becoming a separate question in some other year. Okay, when we are talking about land grants made to military officers, Ikhta. Okay, Ikhtadari, on Ikhtadari as well, UPSC has asked statements. Water wheel, arhatta, wasteland, banjar. Okay, so all these terms we should know. Is this clear? It was a very simple question. Arhatta is a term that we keep coming across while reading Delhi Sultanate. Okay. In mains examination as well in 2013, UPSC had asked a question where they had asked you to write about the economic and social changes which had come during Delhi Sultanate and how it impacted the socio-economic life in Indian subcontinent. So there also we will mention Arhatta. This factual detail will become one example there. The impact will be more productivity in land because irrigation is easier. Okay. Now let us look at this 2016. With reference to the cultural history of India, the memorizing of chronicles, dynastic histories and epic tales was the profession of which one of the following? Shraman. We have talked about these terms in ancient India. Shraman. Who were Shraman? Remember Ashokan inscriptions, Major Rock Edict 13, where he is saying that be respectful to Shramans, be respectful to Parivrajika. These terms are used to denote ascetics whom are wanderers. Okay, so we have already read these terms. Even if we don't come across these terms while reading medieval India, ancient mein to padha hi hai. And we need to know the details of Ashokan inscriptions. So we keep coming across these terms, Shraman and Parivrajak. So if it means ascetic, who are wanderers, who have left their houses, so of course it's not going to denote people who were given the task of memorizing dynastic histories or chronicles. Third option, Agraharika, the one who is holding the Agrahara land. So Agrahara, Brahmadeya, we come across these terms, that these were land grants made to Brahmins. Okay, so of course Agraharika will also not be our answer. Even if we have not come across the term Magad, we will be able to mark it that Magad is the term which is our right answer. In this context, there are a few more regional terms which have been used. For example, Bhat, Charan. They are also the terms which are used specifically if you go to Rajputana or if you go to central India. So in present day Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh, you will find the usage of this term Bhat or Charan, whom were entrusted with the responsibility of memorizing chronicles and dynastic histories, and they used to go from one area to the other, all orally transmitting these details. Okay, so Magad is the term which will be our right answer. If there were regional terms like Bhat, Charan, and they had been given, that will also be our right answer. Is this clear? So again, question on terminology in 2016 as well. D is the right answer. Now let us look at another question which was very simple. Banjaras during the medieval period of Indian history were generally agriculturalists, warriors, weavers, traders. Traders. We have talked about it. Alauddin Khilji, market regulation policy. Banjaras were the ones who were entrusted with the responsibility of buying the crops from the peasant, sending it to royal treasury. Okay, so this was a very simple question. Now, these terms you will not come across in your NCERT, but this term has been given in your NCERT. So here also, if you look at the nature of questions, you will find that there is a division. There are some questions in history as well which are simpler, if we have read our basic book. Okay, there are some questions which are difficult where you will need specialized guidance. So at least we should be prepared with the simpler questions. उसमें तो गलती नहीं होनी चाहिए, उसके ऊपर बाकी हम यहाँ पे जो कर रहे हैं उससे you will get help. Okay, or from your foundation notes as well you will find these details. Okay, so our right answer is going to be D. Okay. If we talk about weavers in their context, dastakar is the term that you will find. Agriculturalists, when we talk about agriculturalists, so we have talked about khudkasht, pahikasht, kashtakar, rayat, rayot. These were the terms that were used in the context of agriculturalists. If we talk about warriors, there is not a particular separate term which is denoting them. Okay, so warrior is going to be known as warriors. There are going to be different kinds of warriors in Mughal period. Some of the terminologies will be in your QRM, so you can revise it there. Okay. Coming to 2015. Now, this is a question which was a difficult question, but it was an interesting question. It is one of the rare types of questions which UPSC asks, where details are not even in specialized books unless or until you go to a specific research article. Okay, so let us look at it, what they have given. Consider the following pairs. Medieval Indian states, present, region. When Wensang came, in Wensang's account, some of these terms have been mentioned. What is written? Champak, central India. Now we don't come across the name of this particular dynasty even if we are reading the specialized books, be it Durgar or be it Kuluta. Unless or until you are going to specific research papers, you will not find usage of these terms. Why I am saying that this question is very interesting? Kulut, that is denoting Kullu. Kullu, Manali, जो हम पहाड़ी areas में trip के लिए जाते हैं, that region it is denoting, and it is given Malabar. It is not in Malabar. Okay, when we are talking about Champak, Chamba, again a very beautiful hill station. It is not Himachal, it is not in central India. Durgar, that is Durg, that was present in Jammu. नहीं छत्तीसगढ़ का नहीं, जम्मू में था, इसीलिए ये क्वेश्चन इंटरेस्टिंग है. लॉजिक से करते हुए सही होने की भी संभावना है और गलत होने की भी संभावना है. Okay, so this was a rare type of question which was asked. Why I have put it here to give you an idea that these kind of questions can also come. We don't have to get panicked there. We need to maintain our calm. We need to see whether we are at a safer space or not. जो questions हमने solve किए, क्योंकि सब तो ऐसे नहीं होते. अगर कुछ questions ऐसे हैं तो कुछ questions ऐसे भी हैं जो हमें आते होंगे. So we need to make sure that we are at a safer cut. अगर वो नहीं हो रहा है, then we need to look at these kind of questions, because if you look at the cutoff, the highest cutoff for general category has been 105. That means even if you are not able to solve, let's say 20 questions, you will be at a safer space if other questions you have marked right. Even if some of them are incorrect, you will be at the safer space. Okay, so some of the questions are going to be this way, where you might not know the answer. In mains it should not happen, क्योंकि वहाँ qualifying का criteria नहीं है. If we are leaving a question there, we are decreasing our possibility of getting selected. Okay, in prelims, even if you don't know answer to one or two questions, it's fine, it happens with everyone. Okay, so this is one such question, but here I am giving you the answer that Durgar is the right match. Otherwise, these two are incorrect. Okay, we get to know about these terms in Wensang's account. He had come during Harsha's reign. Okay, so our correct answer will be 2 only. Coming to 2015, consider the following. The arrival of Babur into India led to introduction of gunpowder in the subcontinent. Why they are saying that introduction? Why this statement is given here specifically when we are talking about Babur? He used gunpowder, and there had been scholars who kept saying that Mughal Empire is a gunpowder empire, because it is due to gunpowder, usage of gunpowder, that Babur was able to ensure his victory even when he had a very small army. But it does not mean that Indians were not aware of gunpowder before coming of Babur. If you look at Portuguese accounts, Portuguese are mentioning very specifically that in southern India at some spaces we see stores of gunpowder. Okay, so Portuguese had come much before Babur has arrived. 1498, 1526. So if in Portuguese accounts we find the mention of presence of gunpowder when they are reaching Indian subcontinent, that means it is not coming to India with the arrival of Babur. Why it is significant in Mughal context? It is due to the usage of gunpowder that Babur was able to ensure his victory in the first battle of Panipat. Okay, so it was important for them, but Mughal Empire was not a when we are talking about Babur, he is not the one introducing gunpowder to Indian subcontinent. Is this clear? So these kind of statements can confuse you if you don't read it properly or if you don't know the other details. So this introduction of gunpowder in Indian subcontinent, right or wrong? Wrong है obviously. Use कर रहा है यहाँ पे, इंश्योर कर रहा है उससे विक्ट्री, इसके लिए बोला गया है मुगल एम्पायर वॉज अ गन पाउडर एम्पायर. इंट्रोडक्शन ऑफ आर्च एंड डूम इन द रीजन्स एंड रीजनल इन द रीजन्स आर्किटेक्चर, यहाँ एपिस्ट्रॉफ आएगा. हाँ, सो इंट्रोडक्शन ऑफ आर्च एंड डूम रॉन्ग है. इट इज हैपनिंग विद दिल्ली सल्तनत इटसेल्फ, इंडो इस्लामिक architecture. With the arrival of Babur and establishment of Mughal Empire, the size is going to be enormous. There will be an increase in size. But introduction had happened way before Babur is arriving to India. So that is also wrong. Establishment of Timurid dynasty in the region. That is right. Babur is tracing his descent both to Changiz Khan as well as Taimur. So from mother's side and father's side, he is tracing the descent to both of them, Mongols as well as Taimur. Okay, so Timurid dynasty, that is why his theory of kingship is also known as Turco-Mongol theory of kingship, some Turkish traditions and some Mongol tradition. Okay, so this is the right statement. Select the correct answer using the code given below. B, 3 only. Okay, even if we had known only this option, all the 3 options can be eliminated and B will be our right answer. Okay. See, when questions are difficult, then depend upon elimination technique. Otherwise, go through all the options and try to acquire as much knowledge as you can. Because one option can lead to the right answer of another question. And this is something that we saw even today. कि एक का जो option है उसको दूसरे में question बना के पूछा है. Okay, so look at all the options carefully. Now 2015, who of the following founded a new city on the south bank of a tributary to river Krishna? We are talking about Tungabhadra river, and there the founding of a city, and undertook to rule his new kingdom as the agent of a deity to whom all the land south of the river Krishna was supposed to belong. Now it is a question which seems very heavy, but it's a very simple question. They are saying south of the Krishna river was supposed to belong. They are talking about Vijayanagar Empire. They are saying he undertook to rule this new kingdom as the agent of a deity, Pampa Devi. Pampa Devi is supposed to be an incarnation of goddess Parvati. She was a local deity. And we discussed it as well in your new NCERT, Themes in Indian History, Part 2. This is the statement with which they are starting the chapter. That this person, Harihar, is saying that he is an agent of local deity Pampa Devi and he is ruling in her name. Okay, so sounds difficult, but it's not a difficult question if we know about the city of Hampi or Vijayanagar. Okay, so our answer is going to be Harihar 1. Harihar and Bukka, founders of Vijayanagar Empire. Is this clear? This was a very simple question. Ibadat Khana at Fatehpur Sikri was the mosque for the use of royal family, Akbar's private prayer chamber, the hall in which Akbar held discussions with scholars of various religions, the room in which the nobles belonging to different religions gathered to discuss religious affairs. C is our answer. In general, if somebody has not read about Ibadat Khana, they'll go by this. Or the first one. Ibadat, basic logic हम क्या लगाएंगे जहाँ इबादत करने जाते हैं. But see, when you are reading Akbar, you are supposed to know what Ibadat Khana means. You are supposed to know what Maktab Khana or Tasveer Khana or Mehzar or Sulh Kul or Deen Ilahi. What is the meaning of all these terms? So if we are missing that, we are at fault. Okay. So हर सवाल में logic से भी answer नहीं आएगा. There are questions where we need to know what is the meaning of a particular term, and it was a very simple question. If you have studied Akbar's cultural contributions, you will be at a safer space to answer this question. Okay. Even if you have read, let's say, Spectrum, you have not gone through medieval India ka NCERT, because there was this misconception among students that if we leave medieval India, then also it's fine. If you look at the questions have been asked continuously from medieval India as well. So even if you have read your Portuguese section, there also you will find the term Ibadat Khana, that Akbar invited Portuguese. Akbar asked the Portuguese to send the religious scholars related to Christianity, and they went to Ibadat Khana several times. Okay, so this term keeps coming across, be it in medieval India or while reading modern India, specifically the Portuguese section. So C is our right answer. So these were the questions I wanted you to look at. I have included some of the photographs that we were discussing yesterday, just to give you an idea how Buddhist architecture looked like. So we'll talk about this today. It becomes more important when we are talking about the topic of Buddhist architecture from mains perspective. In prelims, you should know about the terminologies. Okay, so we'll look at the architecture today. This is how the Vedika looked like. I'll show you you already know because you have done the foundation course, but I'll still discuss what do we mean by the Vedika. And on the Vedika walls, this kind of description, this kind of art was present. This is what we call a medallion. Here you can find a script in Brahmi. Here, I don't know whether it's visible to you or not. Here it's written Danam, that means a donative inscription. This was the clue to James Prinsep. He was finding this Danam everywhere. So he thought that this has something to do with the clue to decipher Brahmi script. He found another inscription and that helped him, but here he had already gotten the clue. So in Barhut, in Sanchi, we find a lot of donative inscriptions. In yesterday's class, we were talking about it, that how not only royalty but common people also patronized Buddhist architecture at large scale. And this is something which is recorded in donative inscription on these walls. Okay. Chakra. We talked about it. What does chakra represent? Which event? Which event does it represent? The first sermon. So it represents the first sermon. It is of course representing Buddha, but it is also representing a specific event in Buddha's life. And here you can see how devotees are gathered and how they are offering their prayers. You can also see that they have put a garland here. Okay, so this is the method of worship, what people are using. I have not included all the slides. I have included some of them to just give you an idea how the architecture looked like. This was the medallion that I had explained in yesterday's class. Dream of Maya Devi. She is sleeping here. If you look at these two women, they are fanning her. So of course she is a queen. She will be fanned while she is sleeping. You can see that here there is this fancy lamp that is put, again, royal symbol. If you look at this woman, she is aware that something divine is happening. Here is the white elephant who is touching the womb of Maya Devi. And just above this medallion there is this inscription in Brahmi script where it is written Bhagavato Ukranti. That means coming of Bhagavat. So Tathagat, Bhagavat, these terms have been used to denote Buddha as well. It has been used to denote Vishnu as well. In the context of Buddha as well, we find the usage of these terms. Okay. So here she is aware of a divine intervention that is happening here, and she is folding her hands to honor the coming of Buddha. If you look at the details, you can look at the dressing pattern, a dhoti-like dress. You can look at how they have made their hair. I had shown this to you when we were discussing Harappan civilization. Harappan dancing girl. Probably we had discussed it, how she has made her hair, and how when we look at the ornaments, so heavy earrings, necklaces, girdle, all these are part of ornamentation pattern in ancient India, and that is something that you will notice here as well. Okay. Now let us move forward to the next slide. Here, Kapi Jatak that I had explained. This one is from Barhut, this one is from Sanchi. The same story has been explained there. If you look at it, there is this tree and all the monkeys, and how this particular monkey, Kapi Buddha, is making a bridge out of his own body so that others can reach. And here you can see the fish that I told you about, how they are denoting fish in the river to indicate that this is a water body. And here there is this sheet on which they are trying to catch Kapi Buddha, and here the ruler is sitting, and here you can see Kapi Buddha. The same story has been presented here as well in a bit elaborated manner. You can see here the army of the king is also present. People are holding sword, and here this person is holding archery weapon. You can see here, you can see the king is arriving on the horse. So here Chhatri has been represented, parasol. So a parasol will be held only by the royalty, or in later times by gods and goddesses. So it is showing that the royalty is arriving here, and here the same story has been narrated. Here you can see the river. You can see how Kapi Buddha is forming a bridge out of his own body. These people are trying to catch him. And here you can see Kapi Buddha and the ruler sitting and taking probably some notes in how to be a good and moral ruler. Okay, so these kind of representations are there. Here we can see the stoop. What event does stoop represent in Buddha's life? Death, Mahaparinirvana of Buddha. And here you can see again devotees are worshipping Buddha. Here you can see how there are divine being. ये अगर आप देखें यहाँ there are wings. So they are flying divinities. अगर आपने पुराने दूरदर्शन पे कभी सीरियल्स देखे हों तो ऐसे दिखाते थे कि कुछ भी होने वाला होता था जो डिवाइन हो रहा होता था तो ऊपर से उड़ के आ जाते थे ऐसे डिविनिटी और वो फूल वगैरह फेंकने लगते थे. सो दिस काइंड ऑफ representation has been there in art as well. Apsaras, divinities, Gandharvas, and here also you can see that they are offering garland to Buddha, okay, who has been represented in the form of stoop here, which represents a very important event in Buddha's life, that is Mahaparinirvana. Here you can see Buddha Pada. Here it has been represented and we see Bodhi tree. So when we were talking about Ashoka, I told you how he is making sure that branches of Bodhi tree reaches various spaces, and there again Bodhi tree has been replanted. So if you go to important Buddhist places even today, they are not Gaya, they are not Bodh Gaya, but in Sarnath, in Kushinara, even in some of the remote areas of Indian subcontinent, you will find that Bodhi tree is present there. So it is supposed to have grown from one of the branches of the original Bodhi tree. Okay, so this is represented here. Again, the way people are offering devotion to Buddha. Here you can see pillar, the elephant capital. All these things are part of stoop architecture. This is Sanchi stoop from one side. This is what we call Toran, and this is what we were looking at, Vedika from Barhut stoop. And here on the upper side as well, there is a Vedika. Okay, so we will talk about it in a while. Here you can see king offering prayers to Bodhi tree. Bodhi tree, what does it represent? The event of enlightenment. Okay, that is represented by Bodhi tree. So you can see that there is a king parasol, and before a king, a woman is offering prayers. So the idea of inclusivity, relative equality that was present in Buddhism, that is here, that the king is waiting and a woman is offering her prayers before the ruler. She can be related to him, she might not be related to him. In both the cases we see that the king is standing behind, and it does tell us a lot about the idea of inclusivity and relative equality present in Buddhism. Here as well you can see Gandharvas, flying divinities. Again here you can see Bodhi tree, garlands are there. So it is a way of offering their prayers. And you can see monkey. Here humans are present, monkeys are also present. So again the idea of inclusivity, forest people being assimilated to the fold of Buddhism. We see a lot of yakshas, we see a lot of nagas being represented on stupa wall, offering their prayers to Buddha. Okay. This is Mara Vijaya. Which event is that? Mara Vijaya? Enlightenment. And how is it represented in symbolic form? Bodhi tree. When we are talking about Buddha's representation in anthropomorphic form, then we talk about Bhumi Sparsha Mudra, Buddha touching the Mother Earth. So here you can see, if you look at demons, they have been represented as deformed bodies, disproportionate bodies. That has been the way of representing demons. Okay, there is this very good book in art history by Partha Mittar, Much Maligned Monsters. So when British came, they started maligning the Indian gods. If you look at Indian gods, they, for example, Ganesh. So we look at the body of Ganesh, so partly human and partly animal. So elephant. If you look at Narsimha avatar of Vishnu, again Nar and Simha. So British were maligning them. That see how they're representing their gods, they look like monsters. And this is what has been countered by Indian historians, that they are not monsters. You are maligning them. This is the way of representing divinity as well in Indian subcontinent. But in many of the cases, demons were represented as deformed bodies, as has been shown here. You can see that Buddha has been represented here in the form of Bodhi tree. So Mar is sending an army, and here you can see a woman is also standing there. So when we talk about the demon of Maya, illusion, women have also been seen as ways of distraction. That is again coming from the patriarchal mindset that society has had, but this is how it had been. So we can't change this representation. We can just understand it, how women have been looked at historically. That representation has of course been problematic, but it has been there. So you will see that he had sent an army. We had discussed this story yesterday, and how Buddha is touching the Mother Earth and saying that you are the witness that I was not attracted to, or I was not taken to the space of illusion by the army that Mara had sent, and I did achieve the true knowledge, I did achieve enlightenment. So this is from the Sanchi Stup, where it has been represented. This is a procession. So in Buddhist tradition, जैसे अगर आप देखें कि आज if we talk about the Ramayana tradition, Ram Katha, so we see Ram Leela being performed every year, at least we see at various parts of India, Ram Leela being performed again and again. So it is a symbolic representation from the life of Ram and Sita and their companions, how things unfolded. So that is not happening today. People have a memory of these incidents, and they do perform it on yearly basis or on whatever basis any culture might believe in. So in that similar context, we see that Buddhists also used to perform the important events from Buddha's lives. Because see, Buddha left in the middle of the night. When if somebody had seen him, they would have stopped him. But here what is happening, there is a large body of people, and you can see that this is the palace. And this also gives us an idea, this is how palaces might have looked like. We don't have ancient palaces present today. Okay, but here there is this representation of balconies. You can see here windows. You can see that there is this dwar, toran dwar as we used to call them. They are multi-story buildings. And here you can see the parasol. That means on this horse, Buddha as a prince is sitting, horse moving forward, again parasol, here again the parasol, here is the parasol, and here when the horse is returning, there is no parasol, indicating that Buddha had left. Okay, so this is the event of Mahabhinishkramad, which was reenacted in Buddhist tradition. On this single image, there are two historians, Vidya Dahejia and Susan Huntington, who have written multiple pieces, that whether it is the actual event or it is the reenactment of Buddha living and how he has been represented here. So these were the images that I wanted to share with you, so that you can have a visual memory of it in the examination, which will help you answer questions in an easier way. So we had discussed these things in yesterday's class, and I just wanted to show you those images. So what we have done till now, we have looked at the PYQs, we have looked at the representation of Buddha in Buddhist architecture in various forms, and the event that we had discussed yesterday, we looked at those events, how they have been represented on stupa walls. Okay, so I hope this much is clear to you. What is the meaning of? Where is it written? Can you just show me once? It is the name of one of the disciples as well. Just show me the context once, okay? Then I will be able to explain it. Okay. Let us come back here. What we were discussing yesterday, we had left at Bodhisattva. Who was a Bodhisattva? A person who was capable of achieving nirvana but used to hold it to help other people reach that stage. And what are the qualities that are known as Paramita. Okay, so we had looked at these two terms, and when we are talking about Bodhisattva, it is not present in the original philosophy that Buddha had taught. It is something which is entering in the fold of Buddhism at later stage. Okay, so that is another thing that we need to remember. Now, when we are talking about Bodhisattva, there are various Bodhisattvas which were present. So one of the very famous Bodhisattvas is Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara. Who is Avalokiteshvara? The Bodhisattva of compassion. Okay, so when we talk about Avalokiteshvara, Avalokiteshvara has been represented in multiple forms. Like he has been represented as Padampani, he has been represented as Lokeshvara, he has been represented as Tara Buddha as well. So there are various cultures where he has been represented in a different way. But the idea is associated with Bodhisattva of compassion. So it can be Avalokiteshvara, it can be Lokeshvara, it can be Padampani, it can be Tara Buddha. When we talk about Tara Buddha, she is the female representation of a Bodhisattva. Again, when we talk about the image of Buddha, the idea of Buddha, it is associated with a male figure. This is one very unique representation that we find in Tibetan region, where Tara Buddha is a female Buddha, and she has also been considered one of the Bodhisattvas. So if there is a statement that a Bodhisattva cannot be a female, will it be a right statement? No, it will be a wrong statement. Why? Because of the presence of Tara Buddha. Okay, so the Bodhisattva of compassion. We come across Bodhisattva Manjushri, who has been known as the Bodhisattva of wisdom. We come across Vajrapani, so represents power. So there are various Buddhas. Maitreya Buddha, who is the future Buddha. One of the popular representations is Laughing Buddha. Okay, so these are some of the important Bodhisattvas that you should keep in mind. When we are talking about Avalokiteshvara, his representations are many more in comparison to the others. And the most important and talked about image is of Bodhisattva Padampani, again compassion. Okay, a form of Avalokiteshvara Buddha, where it has been represented Ajanta. अगर आप लोगों ने उपिंदर सिंह वाली किताब देखी हो, तो उसका जो पहला पेज है, जो उसका कवर पेज है, that is the representation of Padampani Buddha. He is holding a lotus in one hand. So in Ajanta, that particular image is painted, and it is a very famous, very talked about image. Okay, so we should know if there is a very much talked about image of any of these Bodhisattvas. So in the context of Padampani Buddha, we find that representation. Is this clear? So this is something that we should keep in mind when we are talking about Bodhisattvas. The meaning of the term Bodhisattva, it is related with Mahayana form of Buddhism. I will come to that in a while. Mahayana form of Buddhism, what is the meaning of Paramita, who are the important Bodhisattvas, how they have been represented. So they will be represented in the form of sculpture, they are going to be represented on various stupas, walls, and in painting tradition we find the image of Padampani in Ajanta. Is this clear? So remember this much here when we are talking about Bodhisattvas. Now, we had discussed the birth of Buddha, how there were some important events in the life of Buddha, how he is attaining knowledge, and what is the knowledge that he is preaching to people, why he became successful, why when Buddhism was so much liked by people, why did it decline, all these things we had discussed. But when we are talking about Buddhism, it is the teachings are coming from a philosopher who is Gautam Buddha, who had attained enlightenment. When we are talking about teachings, they are in oral form. They are not in written form. And there is one philosopher, one Thera, who is roaming around and spreading his teachings to people. Now, what will happen when he dies? He has spread his philosophy in an oral form. So people would want to compile it. So when Buddha died, what is going to happen there? The disciples, the close disciples, they are going to gather and they are going to ask a particular king, in this case Ajatashatru, to convene the first Buddhist council. So we historically we know of 4 Buddhist councils, and we have referred to these Buddhist councils time and again while discussing ancient India. So first Buddhist council will be convened. When will it be convened? Immediately after the death of Buddha. So we'll talk about 5th century BCE. Where will it be convened? Who is the important ruler? Ajat Shatru. He is going to give the patronage to convene the first Buddhist council. Okay, so 483 BC, 383 BC, 250 BCE, and in some texts you will find 72 CE, in some texts you will find 78 CE. UPSC does not ask you dates in this context, so you can be relaxed कि भाई रटने की ज़रूरत नहीं है. But we should know about the Buddhist councils and especially the results. The questions which are coming from, they are from the results. Okay, so when first Buddhist council is convened, who is going to preside over it? One of Buddha's disciples, Mahakassap. Okay, or if we use the Sanskritized name, Mahakashyap. If we use the Pali name, Mahakassap. Okay, when it is convened, we are talking about the city of Rajgir. Rajgir was the capital. Okay, so when it is being convened, what is happening? For us, the result becomes very important. So when Buddha died, immediately there will be a discussion about compiling Buddha's teachings. What did Buddha say? What were the major teachings? When Buddha is teaching, he is giving certain rules for the people of Sangha, who are going to be Theras and Theris, because he had allowed the entry of women as well in the Sangha. There are some rules which are going to be applicable to general masses, people who are Upasak. So they are not bhikkhu, they are not thera, they are not theris, they are householder people who are following Buddhism. So for them, rules are going to be different. When we are talking about the monastic order, when we are talking about Sangha, for them rules are going to be stricter. Those people will be asked to perform celibacy, that you cannot get married, you cannot get involved in sexual relations with anyone else. When we are talking about householders, they are supposed to be householders, get married and run a family. So for both the categories, rules are going to be different. So what these people would attempt to do to compile all these teachings. Okay, so when they are compiling it, Tripitak, or if we use the Pali term, Pitak. Okay, 3 baskets of knowledge. In the first council, 2 of them were compiled, Sutta Pitak and Vinay Pitak. What is the subject matter of Sutta Pitak? You are reversing it. When we are talking about Sutta Pitak, teachings of Buddha. Vinay Pitak, the rules which were applicable to the monks and nuns, people of Sangha. Okay. In the third Buddhist council, Abhidhamma Pitak will be compiled. Not in the first one, but it is part of the Pitak. That is why I am talking about it here. What is Abhidhamma Pitak? Abhidhamma Pitak will be an explanation of teachings which are present in Sutta Pitak and some of the teachings of important theras. Okay, so when we are talking about different monks, they also taught a few things. So those things were also compiled in Abhidhamma Pitak. Is this clear? So 3 Pitaks, they are very important canonical texts when we are talking about Buddhism. What else are important texts of Buddhism? We have talked about some of them. Buddha Charita, Saundarananda, Nagarjuna ka Pragya Paramita Sutra. All these are important texts when it comes to Buddhism. Okay, Pramana Samuchaya is another text which becomes very important. I will make a compilation of these and I will send it to you. Okay. because you will find all the texts at one place. It will be easier for you to revise, because UPSC does ask questions on Aryadeva, Digganaga, Nagarjuna. These are important people associated with Buddhism. So a better way would be to read a compiled version, because on this area UPSC keeps asking questions. Okay, so that I'll make a compilation and share with you. So here what we need to focus upon, we need to focus upon the literature, which is starting with the compilation of Tipitaka, and it is going to be continued in the coming centuries as well. Another very important text is going to be Jataka. What is Jataka? When we are talking about Jataka, again, it took a very long time to be composed and to be compiled. What is the subject matter of Jataka? Stories from the previous lives of Buddha. That is going to be our subject matter. Okay, so that is also one of the Buddhist literature. Again, it is not being compiled during the first council. We were on the topic of literature, that is why I am giving you this idea. Now, when we talk about Jatak, it gives us an idea that Buddhism does believe in rebirth, because we are talking about the previous lives of Buddha. At the same time, what else do we need to remember here? When we are talking about Jatak, it is also a compilation of stories on morality, because so Kapi Jatak, I told you that story, Kapi Jatak, what is it is talking about? Why non-violence is important, why compassion is important. So the way we were being told stories in our childhood, that this is a story, what is the moral teaching that you get to learn from this particular story. So in this kind of format, we see the compilation. Now, Jatak becomes important. Why? Because of it being related to Buddhist literature. Is there one person who is associated with composition or compilation? No. There are no names of association as such when we are talking about Jatak. Now, UPSC asks on Buddhist literature, but it can also ask you on the texts which are related with morality. Jatak is one of them. If it goes a step further, you should know about other texts as well. Vishnu Sharma पे एक statement already UPSC दे चुकी है. So we should know about Panchatantra. When we are talking about Panchatantra, again the stories can be traced from the very start of the civilization, but it is being compiled by Vishnu Sharma. Okay, and Panchatantra is a text which had travelled across continents, and you will find stories related to Panchatantra in various European countries as well, where they have their own versions. Okay, it has inspired the Arabian tales as well. So when we talk about the text like Panchatantra, it has travelled a lot, and it is again giving us stories on morality. Here we have the name of a person, Vishnu Sharma, who is known to be the compiler, not the composer, compiler. Okay. Another very interesting text on moral stories is Hitopadesh. हित उपदेश, हित के लिए जो उपदेश दिया गया था. And with Hitopadesh again we find the association of name of Narayan Pandit. So that is another text that you can keep in mind, that he was the compiler of Hitopadesh. Is this much clear? So remember these literary pieces when we are talking about Buddhist literature. When we come back to the first Buddhist council, Sutta Pitak and Vinay Pitak, they are going to be compiled. Now they are going to tell us about the rules which should be applicable to monastic order. Are people going to follow it completely? No. If they were following it, Ashok would not have issued that particular inscription at Sanchi. Okay, so there are monastic rules which have been established, but time and again people have not followed it, and there are recorded references of these transgressions that were happening. Is this clear? So remember this. Now see, teachings have been compiled, but after a point of time, if there are different people, let's say if I am teaching something here in this class in a recorded version, then also one student might interpret it in a different way, the other might interpret it in a different way, because teachings are subjective. Okay, so even if there is a particular fact, people can understand it in a different matter. I am not saying that necessarily their understanding might be right. The understanding might be wrong, but they can interpret it in their own way. And this is what is going to happen here as well. People are going to have differences. So when people are going to have differences, they'll have to sit together again. And it is happening during the second Buddhist council that we talked about when we were talking about Kalashok. That second Buddhist council took place. Where did it take place? Vaishali. Vaishali was the capital. Then for a brief period of time, Vaishali became the capital of Magad kingdom, otherwise Rajgira and Pataliputra. Okay, so when he gave the patronage, who is going to preside over it? Sabakami. So we should just know these names. Okay, Sabakami. What is happening here? The division. So here you will see the division in Theravada and Mahasanghika. Generally, when we read history, we read about Hinayan and Mahayana, the division which is going to take place in 4th Buddhist Council. It does not mean the differences were not present earlier. Hinayan and Mahayana is the most talked about sect. Why? Because Mahayana became much more popular in comparison to other Buddhist sects. But the division is happening from earlier period itself. From here you will see Hinayan coming into existence. From this branch you will see Mahayana coming into existence. Okay, so this division had happened in the second council, Theravada and Mahasanghika. In third council, what is happening during the time of Ashok? So it is taking place, Pataliputra, Mogaliputta Tissa will be the president. Okay, what happened there? Compilation of Abhidhamma Pitak. That is a very important thing that is happening there. When we will come to the 4th Buddhist Council, what is happening in 4th Buddhist Council? The division into Hinayan and Mahayana. So Kundalwan, Kashmir, that is going to be the place. Kanishk was the one who patronized it. Who was the president? Ashwaghosh and Vasumitra. Both of them were the presidents. They presided over this council. When that council took place, what happened? The division in Hinayan and Mahayana. Are there further subdivisions that we should keep in mind? What are the further subdivisions? Vajrayana is a separate form. Vajrayana, it is the tantric form of Buddhism. Okay, see, when we are talking about Hinayan, Sthavirvad and Saravasti Vadin. Sthavirvad and Saravasti Vadin. Remember these names being associated with this branch. Okay, when we are talking about Mahayana, here Madhyamika and Yogacharya. From this branch there was another branch of Lokottar Vadin which had emerged. Again, that subdivision comes under which category? Mahasanghika category. So their ideas are going to be similar. When we are talking about this category, their ideas are going to be similar. When Buddhism is going to, let's say, places like Tibet, there you will find coming of Vajrayana. So assimilation of some tantric practices that will be part of Vajrayana. So for example, chanting, that will become a very important contribution. You will see worship of female power as well, Tara Buddha. If you look at the tantric form, be it in Buddhism or even in Hinduism, you will see that Shakti becomes very important when we talk about tantric form in Shaivism. So Shakti worship will become important. That means worship of female. Here in Vajrayana as well, you will find Tara Buddha, who is a female Bodhisattva. Is this clear? If you go to even Majnu Ka Tila, That is a very famous locality to have Tibetan food in Delhi. If you go there, you will find that chantings happen. If you have been to Dharamshala, again you will see chantings happening. Why? Because when China-Tibet problem is taking place and Tibetan refugees are coming here to India, they were granted refuge in these regions. Dharamshala, and some of them also found their home here in Arunanagar, Delhi. Okay, so this kind of worship is also present. So when Buddhism is reaching different places, it is also acquiring different practices in Buddhism. I gave you the example, Japanese Buddhism. So in Japan we see that they believe that Buddha is not dead, Buddha is in deep sleep. When you go to some Chinese temples, you will see that they are offering intoxicating material, wine to Buddha as well. So when Buddhism is spreading to various parts of Southeast Asia, it is going to acquire the local practices there, and it will assimilate the local practices into the fold of Buddhism. Is this clear? So these are the things that you should remember. We can take a break here and then we'll move forward with the difference between Hinayan and Mahayana, and then we'll talk about the Buddhist architecture. Is this much clear? So let us take a 15 minutes break, then we'll meet and continue. Okay, so we were discussing the different branches of Buddhism, and here the most prominent one that I talked about, they are Hinayan and Mahayana. What we have to do from our examination perspective, that just keep in mind that which are the parts of which of the branches. Okay, that is something that you should know. That if Sthavirvad is given, we will talk about Theravada and Hinayan. If there is Madhyamika that has been given, we will talk about Mahayana, Mahasanghika, that branch. Is this clear? Now let us talk about the differences, major differences between Hinayan and Mahayana. So when we talk about the major differences, Hinayan branch is going to uphold to the original teachings of Buddha. They are going to believe that Buddha is not a god. Buddha was a Thera, he was a philosopher. When we use the term Thera, that means a monk. Okay, so they will believe that Buddha was a Thera, he was a philosopher who had certain teachings that he imparted to people. When we'll talk about the Mahayana form of Buddhism, Mahayana form will regard Buddha as God. They'll say he was not only a philosopher but also a God. Okay, so they will talk about worship of Buddha when we'll talk about this particular branch. So they'll talk about worship of Buddha, they'll talk about worshipping him in an anthropomorphic form. So they will also talk about idol worship. Okay, so this is a change which we are witnessing when we are talking about Mahayana form of Buddhism, that will be present in Mahasanghika philosophy as well, because they are taking these ideas forward. Then what else they are going to say? When we are talking about Hinayana people, they will say that you don't need an intermediary to reach to the stage of Nirvana. So one can do it on their own. When we are talking about Mahayana Buddhism, what they are going to say? The concept of Bodhisattva. So they are going to say that Bodhisattva is an intermediary who can help you out in achieving that stage of Nirvana. So if we look at the original philosophy, Buddhism is attacking the importance of intermediaries. Gradually what is happening? Changes are coming in. Okay, these are the people who are going to stick to Pali language. When we talk about Mahayana Buddhism, here we see the shift to Sanskrit language. So for example, Ashwaghosh, Nagarjun, these are the people who will start writing in Sanskrit language. So these are some of the major differences that we should know. Okay, what is happening, what is changing here? Worship of Buddha, regarding Buddha as a god, idol worship, and at the same time talking about the importance of intermediary, that is Bodhisattva. So these are the things which are changing. So we should always put more focus upon what has changed, because when we study history, we study the change that has come. Okay, so when we are talking about Mahayana Buddhism, remember the changes which are coming in. So if in your options it has been given Hinayana Buddhism promotes the idea of Bodhisattva, that is a wrong statement. Hinayan considers Buddha as a god, wrong statement. If it has been given with Mahayana, that is a right statement. Is this clear? Now when we talk about Buddhist philosophy, some of the things they'll add, but other the original teachings that we have discussed, they are also going to believe in it. Apart from that, you will find some new terms. For example, a term called Annika, Anatta and Dukkha. So we have talked about Dukkha, that is sorrow. So they are going to say that these three principles are important. What is Annika? Everything is impermanent. Nothing is permanent. That is the idea that they'll talk about. When we'll say Anatta, the state of impermanence. So again, the basic idea is nothing is permanent in this world. That is what they are going to talk about. And when we are here, every one of us, they are going to experience sorrow, that is dukkha, the first noble truth that Buddha had told. Now when we talk about these ideas, especially the idea of anikka and anatta, this idea, dukkha, both of them are going to talk about. When we talk about the idea of impermanence and the state of impermanence, people are going to explain it differently, and that is where the philosophical difference comes. Some people will talk about giving reasons. So Pramana Samuchaya is one of the texts that will be written on that. Shunyavad is a philosophy that Nagarjuna will propound in Pragya Paramita Sutra. So there are going to be various philosophical ideas which are going to explain the idea of impermanence and the state of impermanence in their own way. Now you are not the student of philosophy optional, so you don't have to go into the nitty-gritties of these philosophies. What you need to know here, that there are differences on the idea of and the state of impermanence. Is this clear? So remember this when we are talking about the differences, when we are talking about the further sub-branches and sub-categories of Buddhism. I hope this much is clear. All of them are going to talk about it, but they'll explain it in a different way. ठीक है कि impermanence कैसे है, किसी कोई उसको लॉजिक दे करके बात करेगा, रीजन दे करके बात करेगा, कोई उसको बहुत ज़्यादा मिस्टीरियस चीज़ के साथ में जोड़ देगा. So in the explanation things are going to be different. Majorly if you look at this idea, Nagarjuna started writing on it at a large scale. Okay, and his philosophy is known as Shunyavad. Which school does he belong to? Madhyamika. Mahayana ka branch, Madhyamika. Is this clear? Now let us move forward and talk about the Buddhist architecture. Now when we talk about the Buddhist architecture and sculptures which are related to Buddhism, this is one particular area which becomes very, very important from mains perspective. In mains you will find questions on sculptures, and in the last 10 years you will find 3 questions on sculptures, particularly related to Gandhar school of art. When we come to the prelims stage, UPSC is not focusing upon that. In mains that becomes important. When we talk about Buddhist architecture, in mains questions have been asked how Buddhist philosophy is reflected in Buddhist art and architecture. In mains questions have been asked, but those questions are either related to terminologies or those questions are revolving around the very idea of architecture. What do we mean by particular terms? Okay, so here we are not going to go into iconography. I have shown you certain images where we have seen the representation as well. I will give you some idea of that which are important from prelims perspective. You don't need to go into the nitty-gritties of iconography, which particular image is denoting what. That is not something that you need to mug up at this stage. Nonetheless, we have talked about it. What does Mara Vijay mean? what does Mahavinishkraman mean, or what do we mean by Mahaparinirvan, how it has been represented. Now this information you can use in your mains examination as well. But in prelims, UPSC asks about terminology, UPSC asks about important symbols. So from that perspective, you should know it. Is this clear? So let us keep that in mind and now discuss, when we are talking about architecture, what does we mean by that. When we talk about Buddhist architecture, there are three important architectural traditions: stupa, chaitya and vihara. We keep referring to these terms when we were discussing ancient India. What do we mean by stup? What is a stup? Okay, so in some of these stupas, relics of Buddha will be kept, not in all of the stupas. So stupa means a commemorative structure in Buddhism. Okay, when we say stupa, is the structure related to, is the structure originating in Buddhist philosophy? That is another question that we should know. It is a mound-like structure which has been referenced as thup in Vedic literature. Okay, so in Vedic literature itself we find mention of a mound-like structure, and the term that has been used there is thup. King Varun, in his context we find this particular mention. Okay, that means stup was not, the structure of stup is not originating in Buddhist philosophy. Buddhism is giving this mound-like structure a different meaning. That is what we need to understand, that the concept was present in Vedic literature. Buddhism gave it a different meaning by converting it into a commemorative structure. Is this clear? So when we are talking about stup, remember this, that the origin is pre-Buddhist. Buddhism is using it as a commemorative structure, giving it a different meaning. We have talked about it in one of the classes. I gave you the reference of Chinese, one of the Chinese texts from 11th century, where Ananda is asking Buddha, what should we do with the remains of Tathagata? And Buddha said that you should keep my relics and make a mound-like structure, and then it should be worshipped. That reference is coming from 11th century Chinese text, not when Buddha died or when the conversation between Buddha and Ananda might have taken place. But we do get this idea that in Buddhism, people are using a mound-like structure as a commemorative structure. Is this clear? So that is, these are the terms that should be clear to us. Now when we are talking about stup, there are various terms. There can be different types of stupas. So one kind of stupa is Angika stup. What do we mean by Angika stup? Where the relics of Buddha and his important disciples have been kept. Angika, Ang. ठीक है, तो जहाँ पे relics उनके रखे गए हैं. There is another type of relic, Upabhogika stup. So where articles which were used by Buddha, where they have been kept and a commemorative structure has been made, that will be known as Upabhogika stupa. And then there are votive stupas. So if you look in, let's say, if you look at the example of Hinduism, because Hinduism is more prominent in comparison to Buddhism in present day India, that is why I am giving the example from Hinduism. So if you look at people who are following Buddhism, or in any religion it is true, here we are talking about votive stup, votive temples are also present, that is why this example. So you will see that people keep asking for blessings, या कोई मनौती मांग लिया कि ये हो गया तो ये करेंगे, ये हो गया तो यहाँ मंदिर बना देंगे, या यहाँ पे किसी तरीके के देवी देवता का स्थापना कर देंगे. So we are asking for something from God, and then when it is getting fulfilled, then people make votive structures. So the third type of stupa is a votive stupa, where people have asked for something, and when the wish has been fulfilled, then they are making a votive stupa. Is this clear? So Angika, Upabhogika, and then votive. Okay, so it can be commemorative, it can be votive. When we are saying commemorative, that means commemorating something, किसी की याद में बनाया गया है. So that can be Angika stup, that can be Upabhogika stup. But stupas are also votive structures, that somebody has asked for a wish, it has been fulfilled, and then they are making a stup. Is this clear? So remember this. How does a stup looks like? So it is a first, here you will see that it's something like a rectangular structure, that is a medhi. Okay. Above this there is a circular structure that is called anda. So if we look at it this way, let's say if this is my hand is the land on which this structure has been built, and on this structure has been built. So this will be medhi, this will be anda. Now here you can do your paridakshina, parikrama. Okay, that will be one way. The second can be that you are coming up here using a stairway and you are doing paridakshina here as well. Okay, so two paridakshina path or circumambulatory paths will be made here. On the ground one, and second on the medhi. Clear hai? So this we should know. Now this is medhi, this is anda. Above this there is yasti, and above this there are going to be chhatris. Now in Buddhism there are three ratnas: Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. Buddha the philosopher, the Thera who is preaching Buddhism. Sangha the monastic order. Dhamma the philosophy that Buddha taught. Okay, so three chhatris were present. Now when the concept of bodhisattva will come to existence, the number of chhatris will keep increasing, because earlier Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, then bodhisattvas will also come to existence. So all of them will be called Chatri, and they are encircled by a structure called Harmika. These are the terms that we should know: Yasti, Chatri, Harmika, Anda, Medhi. They are related to stupa. Okay. Apart from that, here you will find a paridakshina path, and on the ground there will be a paridakshina path. We find here a Vedika that I showed you. ऐसे ऐसे करके इस तरीके से बना होगा, and here we will find medallions. Okay, so this will be called a Vedika, and after it there will be Toran. तो अगर इसके बाहर में हम देखें, यहाँ on 4 sides there will be 4 torans which look something like this. Okay, so on 4 sides we will find 4 torans. Okay, and on these torans you will see events in the life of Buddha will also be indicated. On this side, from here you will start birth of Buddha to Nirvana, to first sermon, to Maha Parinirvana. So when people are doing paridakshina, they are actually looking at the cycle of Buddha's lives. So this is again a part of iconography which becomes important when you will write about means, because this can become a handy example. So when we are looking at this structure, it is not only commemorating the Buddhist philosophy, but it is also telling us about the important events in the life of Buddha. Is this clear? So Toran is a gateway-like structure on which events from the life of Buddha, stories from Jatak, all these things have been represented. So I hope you understood the idea of stupa and how, what are the important terminologies associated with that. Okay, you have to remember that. Now, moving forward, if we look at Chaitya, what do we mean by Chaitya? Place of worship. So when you enter a Chaitya, you will see this kind of structure being present, a smaller version of stup. This kind of structure will be present inside a Chaitya. So when we are talking about Chaityas, they are places of worship, and with that there are places to live for monks and nuns during the rainy season, because they were supposed to be on the move. They are not the people who are going to be householders. They'll go out in the world, they'll preach the philosophy of Buddhism to lay population. Okay, but during the rainy season, they'll need a space to live, and those places will be called vihar. And with viharas accompanied chaityas holding a mini structure of stoop. So when we are talking about vihar, there will be a chaitya as well. There might be or might not be a present of a stoop, but chaitya is going to be there so that these theras and theris can do regular worship. Is this clear? So remember these three structures being associated with Buddhist architecture: stoop, chaitya and vihar. Now if we talk about the stoop walls or chaitya walls or vihar walls, we find representation in sculptural form, representation of important events from Buddha's life, stories from Jatak, various events which became fundamental in the spread of Buddhism, how devotees are worshipping Buddha and how they are understanding the Buddhist philosophy. All these things have been represented in sculptural form. Apart from that, we also find paintings on these walls. So when we are looking at paintings, those paintings are also telling us the very similar stories. On some of the cave walls, we also find bodhisattvas paintings, or in sculptural form as well. We find bodhisattvas being represented when Mahayana Buddhism is coming to existence, because it is with the Mahayana Buddhism that the philosophy of bodhisattva will also become an integral part of Buddhist philosophy. Is this clear? So these are the things that you should keep in mind when we are talking about these structures, when we are talking about the decorative motif on those structures in sculptural form as well as in painting form. Is this clear? Now let us talk about another idea of idol worship. When we are talking about the idea of idol worship, this is a very contentious realm in Indian history. Why it is very contentious? Because when we are talking about making idols of deities, see, when we are talking about Vedic literature, there are bleak references on how a god will look like. In excavation, we don't find idols as such. Okay, where it has been mentioned in literature, there are very bleak references. So in general, you don't find references or evidences of idol worship. Now when we talk about idol worship, there was this debate: did Indians know how to make idols or not? In one of the classes probably we discussed this as well, that how when Kushanas are coming, they are making life-size statues of the rulers. Now before that, whether Indians knew the art of statue making, freestanding life-size statue making or not. So British kept saying that Indians did not know how to make life-size statues which are freestanding as well. And that is where the discovery of Didarganj Yakshi becomes important in 1917, where we got a Mauryan statue which was life-size and which was freestanding. So from this the debate started in Indian art history, that when Buddha idols are being sculpted, are they being sculpted due to Kushan influence, who were foreigners and who came here and settled in India, or there was indigenous way of making life-size freestanding statue as well? Okay, and that is where we talk about two schools prominently. There are other schools as well, Amravati School of Art, but the debate remains between these two schools, Mathura School and Gandhar School. There is a very good art historian, A.K. Kumaraswamy, who has talked about this debate and who is giving this argument that in India, making of Yaksha and Yakshi idols already existed. And when Buddha idols are being sculpted, we are using that method to make Buddha idols. So there was an indigenous style of statue making which was present already. So there are foreign influences, for example, when we talk about Gandhar School of Art, but at the same time, without any external influence, we do have a sculpture making tradition which is reflected in Mathura School of art. And you will see that UPSC focuses upon it a lot when we are writing mains examination. There they keep asking you what are the Greco-Bactrian influences, what are the Iranian influences, what are the Roman influences in Gandhar school of art. Okay, so there this becomes very important. So when we are looking at Buddha images, here just know the basic differences, so that if so from this particular topic in prelims you will not find questions in the last 10 years. In mains you will find 3 questions in the last 10 years. Still you should know the differences at prelims level as well, so that if there is a statement we are in a better position to answer it. So when we talk about these school of arts, both of them are flourishing under Kushanas. Okay. When we talk about the region, northwestern frontier provinces, Gandhar, Mathura, then we are talking about the Ganga Yamuna Doab area. Okay. Mat we had studied as well, a possible second capital of Kushanas. Purushapur, that is known as Peshawar, Mat, that is known as Mathura. Okay, so we had studied this when we were discussing Kushanas. Now when we are talking about Mathura School of Art, they are using red spotted sandstone. When we are talking about Gandhar, bluish or grey sandstone. So the material is also different when we are talking about sculpture making. When we look at Mathura school, Buddha is smiling. When we look at Gandhar, in some of the images Buddha is looking like a yogi, in some ascetic, that the English translation will be ascetic, in some of them he is looking like a hero, in some of them he is very sad. In Mathura school that is not that we find. It is a very smiling kind of Buddha. Okay, we also see that the body in Gandhar school of art, because it is Greco-Roman influence. So if you look at Indian idea of perceiving beauty, it might sound a bit unhealthy, but here body fat was not shamed, it was celebrated. Abhi bhi agar aap dekhein, if you go and talk to some of the older people, they'll say, acha, पेट निकला हुआ है, खाते पीते घर से है. So this is the way they perceive the idea of beauty. If you look at the Western ideals of beauty, they celebrate skinny figures. Okay, and that is the difference that you will see in Mathura and Gandhar school of art. When we are looking at Gandhar Buddha, the body is very chiseled. When we are looking at Mathura Buddha, the body is a bit fatty. So there you don't see that chiseled, properly carved body. Here you will see that. When we are looking at Gandhar Buddha, we see the pleats being represented in a very beautiful way. So they'll make pleats like this. अगर बुद्ध ने कपड़े पहन रखे हैं तो एक एक pleat को बहुत एकदम ढंग से दिखाएंगे. Here you will not find that. Here you will find a transparent kind of dress. So in depicting the dresses as well, there is a difference. When we talk about Gandhar Buddha, the hair is going to be curly. There will be a urni. Urni जैसे बिंदी होता है, वैसे urni करके यहाँ पे there will be a urni that will be represented when we are talking about Gandhar Buddha. So these are some of the differences in iconography that we see. In some of the images you will also see the representation of long boots, long coats. So again, influence of Kushan style. Okay, so these are the things that we often see when we are looking at Gandhar Buddha. When you look at Mathura Buddha, he will also be represented with Bodhisattvas, prominently Padamparni and Vajraparni. So Bodhisattva of compassion and Bodhisattva of power. So these are some of the differences that we should keep in mind when we are studying Mathura School of Art and Gandhar School of Art. Now in Sarnath as well you find a concentration of Buddha images. So in proper academics we study Sarnath School of Art as well, but in UPSC that is not something where you have to delve upon. Okay. Coming to the Deccan region, Amravati. So we talked about Amravati, we talked about Nagarjun Konda when we were talking about Satvahans. So in Deccan region as well, you see a lot of Buddha images being found. So when we are talking about Amravati School of Art, here what is the difference? Again, this will also be indigenous. We are talking about Deccan region. Here there are some differences that we can keep in mind. What are those differences? Here we see white marble being used in construction. That is one thing. Second, you will find a lot of palace scenes also being depicted in the sculpture. When we are coming here, you will see panel style of depiction. What do we mean by panel style of depiction? There is a whole scene which has been narrated in a panel. So let's say if there is this story of Buddha getting birth, and how there was this soothsayer who predicted that Buddha will either be a Chakravartin or a Sannyasin. So that was the prediction that was made. So here on this panel they'll depict Maya Devi in the form of Shalabhanjika or Maya Devi's dream. That means birth of Buddha. On this panel they'll depict that somebody is going in forming the king Shuddhodhan. Then they'll make a demarcating line, and here they'll show the palace scene. Then they'll make a demarcation, somebody is going and telling this inside the palace premises. So a panel-like representation, that is something that we see in Amravati School of Art. That is a very profound thing that you will notice here. Apart from that, a lot of palace scenes have been inscribed here. Is this clear? That is the difference that you can notice. So these are the things that you can remember when we are talking about the architecture and art section. Now, if we talk about the patronage pattern, that is something that we have already discussed. We have talked about Ajatashatru being a very good friend of Buddha, patronizing Buddhism, at the same time fighting the battle of war of relics. That is something that we had seen. We have talked about Ashok patronizing Buddhism by going on pilgrim to important places in Buddha's life, making a lot of stupas, viharas, chaityas, sending missionaries to different parts of Indian subcontinent as well as outside it to spread Buddhism, taking various branches of Bodhi tree and getting it planted at various places. So all the efforts we have already seen. We have seen that how he was trying to control the monastic order in terms of them following the rules of Sangha. That is also something that we have seen. We have seen how when we are talking about his philosophy of Dhamma, a very big influence of Buddhism can also be seen in philosophy of Ashok that he was propagating to the common masses. So that effort we see. We see a ruler like Kanishka again patronizing Buddhism, patronizing various Buddhist scholars, at the same time making stupas, chaityas, viharas, sending missionaries in northwestern parts of India to spread Buddhism. We have seen Palas patronage to Buddhism, making various universities. So Nalanda University was built by one of the Gupta kings, Kumar Gupta. When we come to Palas, we see that they are making Vikramshila University, they are building Sompur, Udantpur, Mahavihar. All these things are there. We see them patronizing, making various bronze sculptures of Buddha and Bodhisattvas, sending missionaries in southeastern parts of India for the spread of Buddhism. We have seen them promoting miniature style painting when it comes to making paintings on Buddhist manuscripts as well as on the walls of chaityas and viharas. So this patronage pattern we have already covered when we were doing ancient India. So from there what you have to do, you have to remember the important sites that we have covered, because UPSC asks questions from the important sites as well. So throughout the historical development in ancient India, we have talked about a lot of sites. What you have to do, you have to study them in the context of them being important Buddhist sites or Jain sites. Is this clear? So whatever names we are taking, Vikramshila, Nalanda, Udantpuri, Sompuri, Bhaja, Karla, Kanheri, Nagarjunkonda, Amravati, Sarnath, Gaya, all these sites we have discussed throughout our discussion of ancient Indian history. What you need to remember from your examination perspective, that they are Buddhist sites. Is this clear? So keep these things in mind. You will be at a better place to answer a lot of questions which are being asked from Buddhist tradition. Is there any doubt that you have in mind which you want to discuss? Yes. There were statues as well, but the prominent depiction is in the form of panels. ठीक है, अमरावती के साथ एक और मसला क्या है, दैट दी साइट वॉज डिस्ट्रॉयड एट अ लार्ज स्केल. क्यों? क्योंकि प्रिजर्वेशन नहीं है. एंड दैट इज अ प्रॉब्लम इवन नाउ. ऐसा नहीं है कि किसी ने अटैक कर दिया, कुछ कर दिया. व्हेन एक्सपेंशन हैपेंस, इफ यू लुक एट द न्यूज इवन दिस ईयर, 18 monuments have been put in the category of lost heritage. There are monuments जिनका हमारे पास एक कोई तस्वीर तक नहीं है पब्लिक डोमेन में. So this is something which has been a historical problem as well, that sites have been neglected and people forgot about those sites. When Cunningham is coming to India, Cunningham is the father of Indian archaeology. He is establishing Archaeological Survey of India. He is taking the account of Fahian and Wensang, and he was very much enthusiastic about learning Indian history. He was taking that account and he was going to places. If you read Fahian, if you read Wensang, especially if you read Wensang, he has given exact details कि यहाँ से इतने किलोमीटर पे ये पिलर है, उससे इतने किलोमीटर में गया, वहाँ से ऐसे मुड़ा, एंड देन आई टुक दैट रूट एंड आई फाउंड अनदर अशोकन पिलर, आई फाउंड वन ऑफ दी स्तूपर्स दैट वाज बिल्ट बाय हिम. सो कनिंघम केप्ट दैट अकाउंट विद हिम एंड ही went from one place to the other finding ancient monuments. In that process he discovered many monuments, and in that process he is also responsible for destruction of some of them. In what way destruction? If let's say it has been written कि इस जगह पे ये वाला जो स्तूप है उसमें बुद्ध की अस्थियां हैं, तो उसमें वो खोद के देख रहा है अस्थियां है कि नहीं है. So in that way that was destroyed as well. So हाँ 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 कोस मीनार, हाँ कोस मीनार you are talking about. So again it is from Suri period. So if you look at it, we are not able to locate it now. So they are delisting these monuments. If you look at, there is this tomb in Jhansi. So you won't even find the mention of that person in records. I kept finding it. कौन है ये? नहीं मिलता है आपको. Why? Because we have forgotten these things. If you look at, there is this Barakhamba complex cemetery which was also on the list, जिसका delisting का बोला है. तो again we find mention of Barakhamba cemetery in historical accounts. धीरे धीरे क्या हुआ कि उस चीज़ को in Archaeological Survey of India's account itself, we find that they started using that particular area as an office. ऑफिस के बाद उसके ऊपर उन्होंने पेंट कर दिया, उसको अलग अलग तरीके से सजाना संवारना शुरू कर दिया, एंड पीपल फॉरगॉट अबाउट द हिस्टोरिकल इंपॉर्टेंस ऑफ दैट प्लेस. नाउ इट इज कन्वर्टेड इनटू अ garden. So these are problems with preservation. In mains examination in past 10 years you will find 2 questions on this very idea when we are talking about acts which were enacted to protect our ancient monuments and how we should take a step further, because in guidelines it has been given कि भाई 100 मीटर का जो एरिया है दैट इज रिस्ट्रिक्टेड एरिया, प्रोहिबिटेड एरिया, नॉट रिस्ट्रिक्टेड, प्रोहिबिटेड एरिया. देयर यू कैन नॉट डू एनी काइंड ऑफ कंस्ट्रक्शन एक्टिविटी. अगर प्रोटेक्टेड मॉन्यूमेंट है उससे 200 मीटर का जो एरिया है दैट इज रिस्ट्रिक्टेड एरिया. सो टू डू कंस्ट्रक्शन देयर यू हैव टू टेक परमिशन फ्रॉम ASI. तो उसका पूरा प्रोसीडिंग होता है जिसके तहत आप वहाँ पे आपको परमिशन मिलेगा एंड यू कैन डू अ कंस्ट्रक्शन activity. These norms are there, these laws are there to protect our heritage, but we are probably not that much aware. आप दिल्ली कैपिटल सिटी में जाएंगे, you will find various monuments which are protected और उसके ही एरिया में वहाँ पे कंस्ट्रक्शन हो रखा है पहले से. तो अब या तो उन लोग को वहाँ से हटा दें, that will be a problem. तो हर लेवल पे हमको यहाँ पे समस्याएं देखने को मिलती हैं, एंड देयर हैव बीन वेरियस केसेस. फॉर एग्जांपल रत्नागिरी, इफ यू नो अबाउट द साइट ऑफ रत्नागिरी, इन 2018 देयर वर एक्सकवेशंस which had happened and there we found a lot of petroglyphs. नाउ वहाँ क्या है, ऑयल रिफाइनरी लगाना है, ऑयल रिफाइनरी लगाने के चक्कर में होगा क्या कि वो सारा जो 2018 में मिला है हमें, that will be lost to us. All those sources will be lost to us. So there were protests and there was a measure to preserve that site. But these questions keep arising. Should we protect our heritage at the cost of development? Should we focus upon development at the cost of protecting our heritage? तो ये सारे बहुत important मसले हैं which we need to take care of. An innovative answer can be development of tourism industry. So protection is also happening and we are able to do some kind of development, generation of employment as well. So you need to think about all these things when we are talking about protecting and preserving our ancient monuments. And it has been a problem throughout the development that people, when they did not know about the importance of a particular site, those sites were destroyed. And it was true in the case of Barhut as well as Amravati. When excavation was happening at that site, these stupas were in a very pathetic state, and most of them you will find in museums. If you go to that site, you won't be able to look at the stup the way it existed back then. So yes, that is one of the problems, and most of the panels you will get to see if you visit Britain someday. So because when excavation was happening, वो क्या कर रहे हैं, उठा के ले जा रहे हैं यहाँ से वहाँ पे. तो private collection में था. After a point of time in British Museum, they started keeping those heritage from India. तो sculptures हैं, panels हैं, that is kept there as well. So we took a detour, काफी लंबा. Now let us come back to the discussion. We have talked about Buddhism. कोई और doubt है यहाँ पे which you want to ask? Anything else? So we should move forward to Jainism. Okay. Now when we are talking about Jainism, again we are talking about 6th century BCE. Mahavir and Buddha, they were contemporary to each other, but we don't have any recorded reference of them meeting. Okay, so probably they did not meet each other. At least we don't have a recorded reference of that. So we cannot keep imagining that they met, whether they met or not. Okay, now when we are looking at questions in mains, you won't find a single question separately on Jainism in the past 10 years. In prelims, you will find a few questions on Jainism, but not as many as there are on Buddhism. Okay, so Buddhism forms a very important part of philosophical tradition from where questions are being asked. That does not mean that we can ignore Jainism. On Jainism, questions have also been asked. What kind of questions? A separate question on Jain philosophy has been asked. Otherwise, you will find that UPSC keeps giving sites and philosophies. So some of the sites can belong to Buddhist philosophy, some can belong to Jain or Shaivite or Vaishnavite. In this format, questions have been asked. Or they'll give you a list of, let's say, 4 literary texts, and they'll ask you which one of them are, or how many of them are Buddhist, or how many of them are Jain texts. So in this context, questions have been asked. Separate questions you will find on philosophy. Otherwise, when it comes to sites or literature, questions are in the mixed category. कुछ Buddhist हो गया, कुछ Jain हो गया, कुछ Hindu हो गया, इस तरीके से करके दिया है. Is this clear? So keep this in mind. Now let us talk about Jainism. If we talk about the reasons for success or origin, it is going to be the same. We have talked about it in yesterday's class, and we was able to point out some of the important terms. For example, violence was a problem for which people seeked solution. When we talk about the idea of exclusivity, that was another problem. So we are not repeating that whole framework. We are taking the analysis from there. Violence, exclusivity, costly rituals, and complex philosophy. These were the 4 words that we took out. Okay. Now Buddhism had offered a solution to it. Jainism will also offer a solution to it. So reasons for origin and success are going to be more or less similar. Is this clear? So we will not repeat that. We have already covered it. Now, when we are talking about Jainism, we find the idea of Tirthankars, and there were 24. Mahavir was 24th Tirthankar. Now, why are they using the idea of 24 Tirthankaras when we don't have historical knowledge about all of them? We do know about 23rd, 22nd that they have historical references, but we don't have historical references of the other ones. So you will see that the idea of antiquity has been often used to provide legitimacy. In our houses, in our daily lives, this happens. If we are told by our elders कि ये करना है और हम पूछते हैं ये क्यों करना है, तो होता आ रहा है इसलिए करना है और इसीलिए सही है. So these kind of arguments are often given. So we associate the idea of antiquity with certain philosophies, with certain ideas, with certain habits to provide it legitimacy. That might have been one of the reasons to include 24 Tirthankaras, as has been argued by various scholars. Okay. What becomes important here for us? Mahavir. If we talk about Mahavir, so he was born in Kundal Gram. He is also, so the life trajectory is going to be similar like Siddharth, who became Gautam Buddha. Okay, so here also he will also be married, he will also have a child, and he also left his house after becoming disenchanted, disillusioned with worldly life. He is also going to meditate, and eventually he got knowledge in Jibhika Gram. So he got knowledge in Jibhika Gram. He preached his first sermon at Rajgir and he died at Pavapuri. If you look at these sites, they are situated in present day Bihar. Okay. So again, his life will also revolve in eastern part of Indian subcontinent. Okay, so these are the things that we should keep in mind. Here, what is the idea that since there were earlier Tirthankaras as well, they had taught certain things, and that is where the difference will arise here. Mahavir is going to teach certain philosophy. Let us understand that first. When we are talking about Mahavir teaching his philosophy, what are his philosophical ideas? Again, very simple ideas he is also going to preach. So he will talk about Satya. Satya, that means you have to speak the truth, you should not tell a lie. Second, Ahimsa. Ahimsa, that is non-violence. So he will also put a lot of focus upon non-violence. Now this is where the difference comes between Buddhism and Jainism. When we talk about Buddhism, Buddhism also emphasizes upon the idea of and importance of non-violence. But it also allows its followers to follow Madhyama Marga, that is middle path. Jainism goes into extremity. When Jainism talks about ahimsa, non-violence, it asks its followers not to practice agriculture. What it allows is trade. So it is going into extremity. It is, we discussed this idea in yesterday's class as well, the idea of soul or Atman. It says that every being, be it living or be it non-living, it has a degree of soul. So be it air, be it soil, be it human beings, be it rocks, everything has presence of soul, and that is why we should not harm it. So when you look at the worshipping pattern as well, they are prohibiting agriculture, and by doing that they are alienating a very large section of population from becoming a Jain, because a large section of population is going to practice agriculture. So that is what extremity will lead to. Okay, that is one thing. They believe that everything, be it living or non-living, it has a degree of soul. They'll say that when people are worshipping, they should not even offer even flowers or milk. Why? Because you are doing violence to the children of various animals, or you are being violent towards the trees. So they are going to prohibit all such things. Okay, so that is the extent of non-violence that Jainism is going into. So Satya, Ahimsa, it will say that you should not steal. So Asteya, is going to be another term that you should remember. Asteya, that means do not steal. Okay. Aparigrah, that means you should not be greedy for someone else's wealth, or you should not you should not you should not think about acquiring a lot of wealth. Again, this becomes contradictory because they are saying you should practice trade. Traders are generally very wealthy people. At the same time, they are saying do not acquire hordes of wealth, and they are also allowing trade to be practiced by Jain people. And the last teaching that was there would be Brahmacharya. So the person should not be involved in sexual activities. So that is another teaching that Mahavir will teach. Satya, Ahimsa, Asteya, Aparigraha and Brahmacharya. Okay, these are going to be the 5 important teachings, and there will be a debate on this because some of the Jain people will start saying that earlier Tirthankaras, they taught only 4 teachings. It is Mahavir who is adding Brahmacharya. Okay, so we will talk about it. Today we are ending the class a bit early because I have another class at some other center. So that is why we are stopping at 3:30. From tomorrow, from the next class, we are going to continue this idea, and then we will talk about Bhakti. We will look at the questions from Buddhism and Jainism topic, and then we will move on to Bhakti. Is there something that you want to ask? Notes आज हम check करके उसमें upload कर देते हैं. कुछ तो already PYQ की फाइल. ओके, ठीक है, इसका उसमें कर देंगे, वर्ड फाइल में होगा मेरे पास, तो आई विल गेट दैट अपलोडेड. ओके, चलो, हैव अ गुड डे.